Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Matt Kreitz. I am a member of the Young Broker Network here in Manitoba. I'm extremely excited to be joined today by Tiffany Reider, a sitting member of the IBAN board. Thanks for joining us today, Tiffany. How's your Monday going so far?
Pretty good. Well, I guess it's a Monday, so as good as a Monday can go. How about that?
Did you have a good weekend?
Oh, yeah. It was warmer this weekend, so that's good for me.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. Spring's approaching, a little bit light at the end of the tunnel there, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to just hop right into it and start with a bit of an introduction about yourself. A little bit outside of insurance first. Tell me a bit about yourself. What do you like to do? Where did you grow up? Let's get into that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm born and raised here in Winnipeg. What do I like to do? I love being outdoors. So interesting fact that not many people know about me. When I was younger, I worked at a summer camp in the summers on an island in Lake of the Woods. I did a 4-week canoe trip. So I was in the woods for 4 weeks, sleeping in a tent, no bathrooms, just a canoe and a tent. That's pretty much all we had with 14 other girls. So lots of people, when they hear that, they do not believe that I did that, but I loved every second of it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat if I could. Aside from that, I love me and my fiance Lucas. We love mountain biking. So there's not a lot of mountains here in Winnipeg, so that makes it a little more challenging to do that type of exercise. But we usually go on a trip to BC and in Kimberley, actually, and we go mountain biking. Aside from that, I love spending time with family. I'm an only child, so family is super important to me. And yeah, I think that's pretty much covers what I like to do and whatnot.
Cool. And I know you like mountain biking and stuff, and I know you recently went on like a snowboarding or skiing trip as well too, right?
Yeah, so winter sports, the only winter sport I've ever really done is curling. And I've started to get into skating, but my fiance is a skier. So we went to the mountains in BC, Big White, and we went skiing. It was my first time, and I was super scared about it. I've never broken a bone, so everybody was like, oh, just be really careful. But it was so much fun. I loved it. Every bit of it. I was actually, as soon as we got back, I was trying to figure out like when we could go back again, but it looks like it'll have to be next year. But yeah.
That's awesome. So stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit, right?
Yeah, definitely. Super out of my, jumping out of my comfort zone, I'd say.
Well, and it turns out you liked it too. So that's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So for those of us who don't know, tell us how you got your start in the insurance industry. Everybody's got their own little unique story. Some people fall into it. Some people it's family, some people it's other things. What's the case for you?
Yeah, so many people assume that because I'm part of a family business, a family legacy, that I kind of just got into insurance right away. But the reality is, when I was in high school and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I wanted nothing to do with insurance. It's like, I don't want to join the family business. I don't want to be wearing like big baggy suits. Only guys are in it, that sort of thing. Because I had this idea that that's what it was like to be in the insurance industry. But so I went into the Faculty of Education at the University of Winnipeg. I was in my third year. I was in my practicum in a grade 7 math and science class. And I don't know if you remember being a grade 7 student, but I clearly forgot. And it was awful. The kids were like crazy. And because I look so young, they did not take me seriously at all. It was a really awful experience. And at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I'm almost done my degree and like, I hate this. Like, what am I going to do? So my dad, I will give him credit. He and my mom, they never like pressured me. Like when I said I didn't want to do insurance, they're like, okay, that's fine. Do whatever you want to do. It's always an option if you want. So my dad encouraged me to take my fundamentals, and he said, well, why don't you take your fundamentals and then next year for university, like still go to university, stay in the faculty of education and work part-time. That way you'll get an idea of like if you like insurance, you can also just earn some extra cash to spend and whatnot. So I did that. And I was halfway through my 4th year in the Faculty of Education, and I realized that I loved the insurance industry. I was working as an auto pack broker, and I got to meet the most interesting of people. I was working at our Corden location, and every single person had a different situation. Although it was all MPI products, it was still every single person has a different situation. They have different needs. I was still able to educate them on what coverages they had and whatnot. And I realized at that point, that was kind of like my turning point. I was like, I could do this for the rest of my life. Like, this is pretty fun. Like, I like this. So that's kind of how I got into it. And the rest is, I guess, kind of history.
That's cool. So like, it's like, so you dipped your toes in the water in insurance, almost like if you relate that back to your snowboarding experience, you dipped your toes in the water, you liked it. And I mean, for insurance, you stuck around, and snowboarding looks like you're going to want to do it again. So
yeah, exactly. So
interesting.
Yeah,
So I think you sort of touched on this a little bit, but like so you started part-time there. What motivated you to stay in insurance?
Yeah, so it really came down to, it was actually IBAM sent out an email saying there was CABE courses coming up to sign up for them. And I was like, well, I think I like this, might as well do it. So I signed up because I had my fundamentals. I figured, I'm not going to take CABE 1 right away because it's very similar. I'll take CABE 2. So I signed up, took CABE 2, and then I kind of used that as my decision factor. I was like, if I pass CABE 2, then I know that this is something for me, that I want to continue this. So I passed CABE 2, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And I made the full switch into the insurance industry. And then I started working to get the rest of my CABEs. And I did it in less than 2 years, which was quite the feat, because when I first started, I was still kind of in university at that point. So it was like tons of studying and whatnot. But yeah, it was definitely the best decision ever. So I guess really I should be thanking those grade 7 math and science students. They definitely changed my life.
Those grade 7ers are hard to control. I can imagine what you were dealing with. So
yeah,
that's cool though. It's nice that your parents must be proud, because like they didn't pressure you to come into insurance, but naturally you sort of found your way into it, right? And it's almost better that way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like, so since my grandfather started our family business, when I told him when I first passed fundamentals, I was like, guess what? I passed. I'm going to be working in the office. He was overwhelmed. He was so excited. And it was another thing that I could connect with my grandfather with. So it was just really special.
How do you manage your work and life balance? How do you have a healthy relationship between your work and the actual stuff that you enjoy in life? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so that's definitely a big challenge I have. I like to take on tons of opportunities. I don't want to let anything slide by me, because being young, we want to kind of get into everything that we can, because you just never know what opportunities are out there, right?
For sure.
So for me, I probably don't have the best work balance relationship. But one thing that I've started doing is I do get work emails to my phone and while I'm at home. So on the weekends, I try my best not to look at the work email. I will admit that doesn't always happen. I do sometimes on Sundays take a peek and try to get a head start on Mondays. But I think that when I started doing that, that really made a difference, because it's like, okay, 5:30 Friday hits, I'm checking out, I'm not dealing with work stuff. However, that being said, for us, we have a 24-hour emergency claim line. So on the weekends or when we're closed, that claim line leads directly to myself and 2 of our other senior management group members.
Okay.
So there are times where I do have to take those calls, because if somebody's house is on fire, you can't really
emergencies happen, of
when
course,
that's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So, but those experiences, it only takes a few moments to help somebody. So that I think is okay. But otherwise, work life balance, I think just making sure to take time for yourself and kind of check out of the work life, essentially.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, because you put in so much work, you put in so much effort during that actual work week that it can be, I mean, mentally exhausting a little bit, right? So it's good on the weekends or whenever you have your day off or days off to get that little refresher, right?
Mhm.
Certainly healthy. So role models. So you mentioned that your grandfather and your father were both in the business. Would you see those people as your biggest role model? Or was there somebody else that helped guide you throughout your career? Or
Yeah,
touch
for
on that
sure.
a
So
little bit.
I would definitely say my grandfather and my dad are some of my biggest role models. So my grandfather, he unfortunately passed away last year, but we were very close.
Sorry to hear
And
that.
thanks. We were very close, and he started our family business. And he went from one office to then my dad and his brothers growing it to what it is today. And he unfortunately went blind at a pretty young age. I was a baby at the time, so he had to retire early. And so he didn't get to like have his full work experience because he retired before he needed to.
Sure.
And I got to hear his stories about what he dealt with and his clients and whatnot. He had an interesting sense of humor, so I can't repeat all of his stories, unfortunately. But it was just interesting to hear like how he helped those clients. And when I was last year, when COVID, well, COVID is still happening, but when COVID was bad at the beginning of 2021, one of our offices was a bit short-staffed. So I went to go help at our Garden City location. And I was back to working the front line to help give them some relief, which was fun because I love AutoPack. I love helping customers with that. But what was really special for me was I got to help some of those clients that my grandfather used to deal with. So being able to help those people was really something special. And then as for my dad as a role model, he's never afraid to speak his mind for the greater good, essentially. So sometimes he can talk out of turn, but it's always for a good cause. And so I think that is really important, especially in our industry, because we are helping consumers. We're trying to advise our clients. We're the middle person between the insurance company and our clients. So those clients need that person to speak out for them, but the insurance companies need that person to protect them as well. So I think that's really important. And that's something that I've learned from him. And I definitely look up to both of them and look for guidance from them.
That's awesome. And it's super helpful to have access to these role models too, right? It makes growing in the business and growing personally a lot easier, right? When you have somebody to bounce off questions and ideas and whatnot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say, like the biggest, I guess the biggest thing you learned from these role models? Was it that, like you mentioned that your dad advocates for the clients and the insurance company and kind of stands up for what is right, essentially? Is that your biggest takeaway from your dad, or what would you say your biggest takeaway is?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely one of the biggest things that he's taught me, is that to always kind of believe in what you feel is right and to stand up for that. And I think that is a huge thing, especially with my involvement with YBN and with the IBAN board. When I was on the YBN, I had the opportunity to participate in IBAC's Hill Days and go to Parliament Hill and have meetings with our members of Parliament and discuss the importance of the Bank Act and important causes to insurance brokers and to the consumers. And learning those lessons from my father has definitely helped me in those situations to have that passion to not be afraid to stand up for what is right.
That's awesome. And it must be, especially going down to Parliament. I mean, as a young person too, it must be intimidating too, right? So they're having that role model to bounce those things off of must have been helpful in those situations, I imagine.
Yes, definitely.
So You've got quite a lot of experience being involved with different boards and committees. What benefits do you see from participating with those boards and committees?
So experience, opportunities, meeting new people, those are kind of the main top three things that I get from it. So whether it's a board or committee in the insurance industry or outside the industry, it's in our community, you're meeting new people, and every person you meet, you can learn something from them. So that is something huge that has helped me. And also the opportunities. So like being on the YBN, I've had the opportunity to grow in the insurance industry. I've had the opportunity to now be a part of the IBAN board, go to Hill Days in Ottawa, meet some of our young broker counterparts from across the country. And that has been huge for helping me in my career. Being able to reach out to somebody in Ontario when I have a client that his kid is moving to Ontario, and being able to reach out to that person and connecting them and making sure that they have proper coverage and are able to get the help they need is super important. So I think that is a really big part of why I get involved. Also, my mom says it's because I have a hard time saying no when somebody needs help with something. So that also could be part of it. But no, I do think it's the opportunities and the experience and the meeting new people. It's just, it can really help you.
For sure. And like for a young broker like myself or other young brokers out there, I mean, you're a young broker too. Like the networking aspect is so beneficial, right? It's just when you've been in the industry for years and years, you've already got those connections. When you're young and just getting into it, it's so, I mean, I find it so helpful to have these different connections. Like you said, if you had a question in Ontario, you can talk to that Ontario broker and just bounce it off them, right? It's a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So challenges and successes I wanted to get into a little bit here. So let's start with challenges. So what would you say the biggest challenge you faced thus far in your insurance career? And how did you overcome that to get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'd say a challenge that I probably experience almost every day, if not at least once a week, is I look very young. So I often get comments saying, "Are you old enough to be a broker? Are you really, do you know what you're talking about?" So that is definitely a challenge that I face every day, almost every day. That was a hard one at first. When I first joined, it was like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Like I would get all like defensive in my mind. But what I've learned is that as long as you say, like, as long as you can educate, for example, the client, that you know what you're talking about and try your best, that's all you can really do. And I find that presenting yourself in a way that shows you have the confidence and you know what you're talking about really helps. But I also think that being young kind of also is a strength too. So it can be a weakness and a strength, I find at times. So for example, our friends, for example, in our age group, they're starting to buy houses, they're starting to buy new cars, they're starting businesses. And their parents are like, "Oh, you need insurance," which they do. But those counterparts in ours, they feel more comfortable dealing with somebody that they can relate to. So although my dad would be happy to help my friends, being able to talk to somebody who can answer their text question about whatever their question is, or being able to quickly ask the question and being able to word it so they understand what insurance is a huge benefit. And being able to connect with them is a huge strength, I'd say. So yeah, age is definitely something that is a challenge, but a blessing.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, it's almost relates back to, I don't know if respect is the right word, but it's earned, not given, right? And as a young broker, you have to earn that respect, right? And I mean, it relates back to confidence. It relates back to knowledge and everything. It all works full circle. But it's interesting how you've worked through that and overcame that. So what would you say has been the proudest moment of your career? Is there any one particular instance that sticks out to you, or is there something more general? Like, what would you say for that?
Okay, I can only think of two things right now. No, I think I thought of three. Okay, I'll do them really quick. These three things that make me super proud about being a broker and just have been proud moments in my career. The first one was when I kind of touched it earlier, when I told my grandfather that I was becoming an insurance broker. That look on his face when I told him is stuck in my mind forever. And it was such a special and proud moment. The second one would be joining the IBAM board. I feel that I'm able to help both our industry and our fellow brokers and brokerage owners, and helping the consumers. That's super important to me. The whole educating aspect, that stuck with me, even though I'm not a teacher anymore.
You have those roots though?
Yeah. And the third thing is kind of a funny moment, but it made me proud all the same. So when I went to Hill Days in 2019, there was a lunch, I think it was a lunch meeting. And one of the MPs was at the lunch meeting, and he gave a little talk. And when he was leaving, they wanted to take some pictures with some of the brokers that were there. I just happened to have been at the right seat at the right time. I was closest to the cameraman. He's like, stand up, get in the picture with him. So I stood up, went and took the picture with the MP. And he looked at me and he's like, you're a broker? And I said, yep, I am. And he was like, I can't believe you're old enough to be a broker. And I laughed it off. And he's like, I'm so shocked. That's incredible. And he was so impressed that somebody so young was there, was a broker, was advocating for insurance brokers, for the consumers and everything. That was a proud moment for me, that I kind of changed the idea of what this MP thought of brokers. So that was my other proud
That's
moment.
cool. That's cool. And I think it's a stigma that insurance has, right? Is that it's a older person industry. And I think that's relatively starting to change. It's slowly changing. But it's nice to, and I mean, you can see that based on the MP's reaction that stigma is real, right?
Yeah.
And it's nice to see people like yourself that are working towards changing that. So that's awesome. Was there any mistake in your career that sticks out? I know it's a tough question to ask, but sometimes mistakes that you make can be your biggest growing or learning experience. Was there anything that you can put your finger on that I screwed up, but I learned from it this way? And I mean, we don't have to get into specifics or anything. I'm just curious.
I'm sure I've done many mistakes. I am human. We all make mistakes. I can't think of anything in particular, but one thing that I regret is not listening to my family and maybe just trying insurance earlier. If I had joined the industry right out of high school, I can't imagine where I would be now. So I think that's one of my biggest mistakes or regrets. But other than that, I don't know.
Well, no, that's a good one. That's a good one. So how many years have you been in the insurance game?
Almost 7 years.
Well, and look at what you've accomplished in 6 or 7 years, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're talking going back to when you're 18, if you had that many more years, I mean, who knows where you'd be, right? So that's, I mean, it's something to think about, right? Goals. So does Tiffany Reider have any big plans for the future?
Yes. I think it's really important that everybody set goals, whether they're attainable or not. Just having something to work towards is super important, and it helps you grow as a person. So goals for me, it's funny you ask this question, because quite a few years ago, Pete Tessier had me on the insurance podcast, and he asked me a similar question, except it was, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Okay.
And at the time, I said, I hope to have completed my term as a president on the IBAM board, and that I have now worked my way up to the IBAC board.
Okay.
So I would say that those are still goals of mine. I think I've mentioned before, advocating for brokers and for the consumers is super important to me. And I think having a young person help advocate for those things is also important, to kind of change the idea of what the public thinks is an insurance broker is important. So I would say that those are still my goals, is to one day.
That's awesome. And I mean, those are some pretty
involved.
prosperous goals too. So
Yeah.
that'll be exciting to see. I mean, I hope it works out for you. That's awesome. And I mean, you've definitely made some big steps towards that already. So making some steps in the right direction. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for young brokers moving forward in insurance?
The sky's the limit. There's literally every opportunity available.
Lots of jobs, lots of options, right?
Not even just jobs, just like, jobs, but like career growth. Like, for example, joining the YBN, the connections you can make. I had the opportunity to help establish the Young Brokers Advisory Committee, which is a subcommittee of IBAC, the Insurance Brokers Association of Canada. I wouldn't have had that opportunity to help establish it and to be involved and connect with our counterparts across the country if I hadn't taken the chance to get involved with the YBN. So I think that one of the greatest opportunities young brokers can have in the industry is to work on their career growth, join those committees, go to those events, reach out, network. Like, that is where you're like start and you can flourish from.
Absolutely. And I mean, it all relates back to, I mean, a common theme of this interview here is stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit, right? And it's, I mean, doing those things that maybe make you a little bit uncomfortable, but it's going to be, I mean, worth it. You're going to see the benefits. So that's awesome. You are a big role model in the industry, especially for young people. I mean, it's somebody to look up to. What advice would you give the next generation of leaders? I mean, I know you're still currently in that young generation, but what would you give as a point of advice to, I guess, other people, younger brokers trying to thrive in their career?
Yeah, so I guess I've kind of said this, but take that chance. If you're thinking about getting involved with the YBN or getting involved with one of the other groups that's part of the insurance industry, take the chance, go to that event, meet the new network, meet the people. Once you kind of get your foot in the door, like, the opportunities are endless. As we know, because we're in the industry, you don't just have to be a broker, right? Like, you can work your way up. You work in claims. There's so many different jobs and opportunities within our industry that I think people might not think about. So I think that that's a huge a huge step that people need to take, is to network, reach out, and
no, I agree with you for
out
sure.
Of your comfort zone, like you said. And if people have questions or they're like scared to because they don't know anybody, like, hit me up. I love to talk. If you haven't figured that out, I love meeting new people. If you just need that like crutch to kind of get you into that event to help you feel more comfortable, I'm happy to be that person. I think that that's really important, that you have somebody that you can kind of lean back on when you're feeling a little uncomfortable. So yeah, my advice is get involved, and as much as you can.
Well, and that's awesome too. And especially with you being a younger person, maybe some of the people that wouldn't be comfortable reaching out to the big CEO or that's been in the industry for 20 years, maybe they'll feel more comfortable opening that lines of communication with you. So that's awesome. I know we've kind of touched on this already a couple times here, but you've been a long member of the Young Broker Committee. How many years were you a part of it?
I think it was about, in total, 4.5, 5 years.
Okay. And we've sort of touched on this already, but can you give us one last sort of plug on why the young brokers in Manitoba or throughout Canada should not be hesitant and they should sign up for the Young Broker Network?
Yeah, so like I said, opportunities, they're endless. And also just making those connections are super important. So one of my good friends I actually met from the Young Brokers national group. And I think it's super important that you make those connections, because if you have a question, I don't know, I feel more comfortable calling somebody that I've met and that I kind of know from whatever province it is, than just calling up someone I find on Google, right? Also, just like I said, opportunities, career growth, networking. It's so important. It can help you.
And the Young Broker Network, it's not what everyone thinks. It's not like if you join it, not everybody's trying to poach you. It's really to work on the insurance industry in general, and to better your own career. It's not for you to employers shouldn't be hesitant on letting their brokers to join the Young Broker Network. I think it's a great opportunity.
And that's, I think, super important to note. It's not so much about being worried that somebody's going to steal your employees. I think you should be proud that your employees are trying to get involved in the industry. They're trying to advocate for the industry that you are both in, that they're looking to make those connections so that they can better serve your clients. For example, at Young Brokers events, restoration companies come out, the insurance companies come out. Being able to have your employees make those direct connections with the underwriters, with those restoration companies. In the event they need to call a restoration company for a client, being able to have your employee call that restoration company confidently and know they're going to do good service for your client, I think that's a huge benefit. And I think that maybe there's some brokerages in Winnipeg that unfortunately aren't taking advantage of that opportunity. So, yeah.
No, I think that's awesome. And you're representing your company, right? To me, it's only a positive.
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. I think we've pretty much covered everything here, Tiffany. So I think we can wrap it up. I really appreciate you joining us today. And I think we've covered a lot. I think it's awesome how you're a great advocate for the young brokers. You're a young broker yourself, and I've seen great success. But yeah, thanks again for joining us. And look forward to doing some more events and stuff with you in the future here.
Absolutely. Always happy to support.
Thanks, Tiffany.